regarding your kids, that they had maybe more faith than you did going through this, or was it harder for them with you going through this?
They each dealt with it uniquely. When I first got sick, we only had one daughter left at home. She was a junior in high school. The other two were beginning college, and they were both in Michigan in Bible college at the time. So Anna saw everything on a day-to-day basis. She saw the good, the bad, the ugly. And, as a teenager, she did ask the question, why am I going through this with my family and all my friends don't have to do it? And that was her question. That was her issue. And her mom's answer was always perfect. She said, Anna, God is preparing you for something. And he's teaching you some things as a young girl, because someday you're going to have to help other teenagers through hard things. And now she's our youth pastor's wife. And it was like my wife had a prophetic insight there. My son, he tended to bury everything. And when we told him that amputation was a possibility, he just shut that out of his mind. And when we finally told him after a couple of months that we were going to have to amputate, he took it hard because he had shut down that possibility at all. Sarah was a little more level-headed about it. She accepted it. She took on my personality of finding ways to find humor in things. But at the same time, she took it to heart, and she became very supportive and very loving. And she wanted to make sure that she wasn't a burden to us worrying about her going off the deep end because she was upset because of what we were going through. So they were all unique, and they're still working through things pretty much in the same way.
So you talked a little bit about in your book and even in the conversations we've had about God meeting some needs and coming through in some big ways. Can you talk about a few of those stories?
Oh my.
Maybe your favorites?
Yeah, I'll talk about my wife's first. When Trina got diagnosed with glioblastoma, I had $8 in the bank. We were living paycheck to paycheck because my medical bills had pretty much wiped us out financially. We had no savings left. We were paying our bills and our head was above water, but that was about it. Our insurance did a very good job of taking care of things. But even with that, during the year that we dealt with Trina's cancer, our out-of-pocket expenses were over $80,000. We went to Mexico for a month for alternative treatment, and that was $40,000, and you had to pay it up front. We didn't have a credit line big enough to do that. The second time we went, it was about another $10,000 because it was only for 2 weeks. It wasn't nearly as much treatment. But we had a lot of things like that came up, $80,000 worth, and we paid cash for all of it. And paid all of our bills and had money in the bank, and we never asked anybody for help. I have a policy that if I have a need, I go to God, and I only tell people about the need after God met it so I can praise the Lord for what he did. But every time we turned around, there was a check in the mail or many checks in the mail. And we, again, $80,000 plus that God gave us during that year. And the only person we talked to about it was God. My son had opened a GoFundMe page, and I found out about it and made him shut it down after a day or two because I just don't operate that way. So that was just God. And that was God continually telling Trina and I and our children and our church that he had everything under control. And it was a major blessing. The second area is after this last amputation, an above-the-knee prosthesis. My prosthetist, they provided me with what is called a C-leg. It has a microprocessor in the knee, but the initial prosthesis cost $55,000, and my insurance will pay half of that. So I needed to come up with somewhere around $27,000, $28,000, and they submitted the paperwork to the insurance company, and we still don't know why the insurance company paid for the whole thing. I didn't pay a dime.
Wow.
then as after the surgery for a year, what's called the residual limb keeps shrinking and changing shape. So part of the prosthesis that the leg fits into has to be changed. And every time it's $16,000. And I've had it changed 3 or 4 times. And again, insurance for some reason paid the whole thing. So I'm walking around now on about $90,000 of hardware for which I should have had to pay $45,000 of it. And I didn't pay anything. My insurance took care of all of it. And once again, it was just going through a hard time and God doing something out of the ordinary to say, I've got this covered. Don't worry about this. Don't stress about any of it. Because if I've got this covered, I've got everything else taken care of too.
Wow. That's amazing. So you have this prosthesis now, and this is maybe, sort of a little bit of an aside, but when we talked, you talked about going to the gym and working out. And if I remember right, you've run some races. I don't know how long they were, but you're kind of back on your feet as far as those things are concerned. You can do most of the things you could.
I can't run yet on this new one. I did run when I was a below the knee amputee, and I competed in some 5K obstacle runs, and I came in second place every time. Just couldn't get that first place medal, but for me that was pretty good because I'm no young guy anymore. It takes 3 years, they say, to fully adjust to an above the knee prosthesis, and I'm only a year and a half into it. But I found a trainer at a local gym who has experience with lower limb amputees, which is unheard of. And he and I just hit it off very well. So I train every Monday and Friday with him for an hour. And I try to go to the gym 6 days a week and just stay at it. And I'm walking okay. Walking is a very exhausting process of everything that I do. It really wears me out fast. And I'm supposed to go to some clinics to get some advice on how to learn how to run with this thing. But I'm working hard at it. And when I first went to the gym with Sam, my trainer, I couldn't even do a sit-up. The surgeries had just devastated me physically again. And, I'm bench pressing and deadlifting and stuff that I never did when I had 2 legs. So God's been good, and I've been making a lot of progress in the last year.
Does part of that, do you think, come from the acceptance you talked about? Like, all right, this is my situation. I'm going to make the best of it. Yes.
Because there are days that I think, what's the point? What's the point? I'm 62 years old, and it's not like I'm a 30-year-old trying to do this and compete, and do stuff, and I have to kill that mentality real fast because we serve God with our bodies.
Absolutely.
And I have to make sure that this body is in the best shape it can be so that I can serve God as well and as long as I can.
That's good. And I imagine, that drive does carry over into the other areas of your life that, that willingness to move forward and to grow.
Oh, absolutely. It's, if I stop learning, because right now everything is a challenge and every new thing that comes along is very, very difficult at first, but I just have to think it through and work it through and go at it over and over again till I get it, or I'm going to be stuck in a wheelchair sitting in a chair for the rest of my life, and I just can't do that.
Right. Yeah. So back to the book a little bit. You drew some comparisons to Cherith and sitting by the brook there and the place of isolation. And we talked a little bit about that with the helplessness. But as like a man, can you describe that and maybe give us some, if we're feeling isolated? And I know that's even the few men that I've talked to, we have a hard time talking to people about what we're going through. And I think that can create some isolation. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, by nature, I'm an introverted person. And so when I first got sick, it wasn't my nature to just pick up the phone and call somebody and say, hey, I'm having a rough day. Can you help me through this? But just a year or so before I got sick all those many years ago, God put me in touch with a preacher in California, Pastor Doug Fisher, who took an interest in me, and he just picked up the phone and called me. And then he introduced me to some other men that were going through trials. And with those other men, I've actually built extremely close friendships over the years. And we routinely now are comfortable just to pick up the phone and call each other and encourage each other in the Lord. If I didn't have that, all of this would have been much, much harder to do. And I had to get over myself and my nature to be introverted and just realize it is not good that the man should be alone. And that's not just about marriage.
Sure.
Two are better than one, Ecclesiastes say. And God's put some remarkable people in my life that have overcome some amazing challenges that inspire me and help keep me going. And I know if I'm having a particularly bad day, if nothing else, I can just shoot a text and say, it's a bad day. Can you pray? And I know that they will, and that helps me.
That's good. And I think for some men too, there's, like you said, get over ourselves. Like there's definitely a measure of pride involved, laying our problems maybe at someone's feet and saying, I need help. Obviously it's maybe easy for us to take it to God because, he's not sharing it necessarily with anyone in that way. But I think, do you have any thoughts on the pride involved and us getting over that?
I think that's the major issue is pride, is we don't like to admit weakness and so forth. And so in my case, I can't speak for anybody else.
Sure.
Through all of these different things, God just put me to the place where I had to have help.
Right.
I had to have help just to walk. I had to have help to mow my lawn and to rake my leaves and so forth. And so he gave me no choice. It was a humbling time in life, but those are the best times when you look back on them, because had I not done that, I would not have these amazing friendships now that are so valuable, so rich, so helpful and encouraging to me. So yeah. God sometimes, I think, puts us in humbling circumstances so that we realize I have to have help, and we cry out for it and we ask for it and we find out it's there.
So you talked a little bit about like mastering the test that God gives you. Do you think, I know this may be a little bit of theology, but obviously not everything that we go through is a test, but or maybe not a test specifically from God. But first of all, how do you determine that? And second of all, then once we figure out, okay, this is God testing me, talk a little bit about that, mastering that test, if you don't mind.
Well, I'm the kind of person when any of these things have happened, my first question is, God, did I do something that has displeased you? And this is chastening. And I want the Lord to search me and show me, because if it is, I need to get it right. I need to respond to it in a right manner and go forward from that point. So that's always my starting place. And then after that, and, in my case with, the amputations, the loss of my wife, and so forth, they are permanent things. So now I look at them as my heart's as right as I know how to make it. And I don't mean that arrogantly. It's just something I constantly look into.
Right.
This is my day-to-day thing. This is now a test of faith in so many ways. So I just start asking the Lord, show me what I'm supposed to learn. Show me how I'm supposed to use this. Show me how to get your strength to get through the next day or the next part of this challenge.
Amen. If you had, so I'm 31 and I haven't had any major things like that happen in my life. I know my mom has gone through heart surgery and a couple other scary situations, but I mean, I don't think, to me, they don't seem quite as big as these kind of deals. What maybe advice would you give towards people who, whether younger or older, but are in life and have not yet gone to this place and to the extreme? how do we make it through? How do we recognize it? Is there some obviously spiritual advice and then some practical advice that you would give to someone,